The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Regular mail, nothing special, just a cream-colored envelope with the embossed seal of Westlake Preparatory Academy in the corner. I'd been waiting for it for weeks, checking the mailbox every day like it contained lottery results. In a way, it did. My son Jake's graduation ceremony was the culmination of 18 years of sacrifice, love, and determination. I made myself a cup of tea before opening it, a small ritual to savor the moment. The kitchen counter was cluttered with memories. Jake's elementary school art projects still adorned the refrigerator, his academic awards lined the windowsill, and photos of us together through the years were scattered across the bulletin board. This modest two-bedroom apartment had been our sanctuary since the divorce 5 years ago, when Jake was just 13. It wasn't much, but I'd made sure it was always a home. The envelope tore easily beneath my fingers. I unfolded the letter and read, "Dear Miss Wilson, we are pleased to invite you to Westlake Preparatory Academy's commencement ceremony honoring the class of 2025 to be held on Saturday, May 24th at 11 a.m. As per your designation as secondary family, you have been allocated one guest ticket for the ceremony. Due to venue capacity restrictions, we cannot accommodate additional guests beyond the allocated ticket numbers. Please RSVP by May 1st. Sincerely, Principal Eleanor Davis, Westlake Preparatory Academy." My hand trembled slightly as I reread the words secondary family and one guest ticket. I set the letter down and took a deep breath, trying to control the familiar tightness in my chest that appeared whenever I was reminded of my new place in Jake's life, at least on paper. Secondary family. As if the years of nursing him through fevers, helping with homework until midnight, working double shifts to afford Westlake's tuition, and being both mother and father could be reduced to secondary. I knew exactly who was responsible for this: Vanessa. Richard had remarried barely 8 months after our divorce was finalized. Vanessa Brighton Wilson came from old money, lived in a mansion in the Heights, and had taken an immediate interest in molding Jake into her idea of the perfect son. Designer clothes replaced the ones I'd carefully budgeted for. Weekend fishing trips with his dad became ski vacations in Aspen. And somewhere along the way, the woman who'd never attended a single parent-teacher conference or stayed up all night with a sick child had started calling my son our Jake on social media. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through recent messages from Jake. We still talked nearly every day, though the conversations had grown shorter since he'd started spending more time at Richard and Vanessa's house. He was still my sweet boy, but at 18 he was increasingly susceptible to the allure of Vanessa's world. The connections, the opportunities, the ease. I couldn't blame him. Not really. What teenage boy wouldn't be seduced by a life where money was no object? My finger hovered over his name to call him about the ticket situation when a notification popped up from Instagram. A mutual friend had tagged me in a comment. Curious, I tapped it. The comment led to Vanessa's profile, tastefully curated of course, and her most recent post, a professional photo of Richard, Vanessa, and Jake standing in front of their home. Jake wore his Westlake blazer, looking handsome and uncomfortable in equal measure. The caption read, "Countdown to graduation day. So proud of our son and all he's accomplished." Finalizing plans for the celebration of the year, Jake's grandparents flying in from Florida, Richard's sister and her family coming from Chicago, and we've reserved the entire East Wing at Le Chateau for the reception. #proud mom #graduation celebration #family first 63 likes. 17 comments congratulating their family. I set my phone down and stared at the graduation invitation again. 1 ticket, secondary family. My tea had gone cold. I dumped it in the sink and gripped the counter until my knuckles turned white, tears blurring my vision. All those nights I'd spent helping Jake with calculus problems. The 3 jobs I'd worked to keep him at Westlake after the divorce when Richard had threatened to stop paying his share of the tuition. The college application essays we'd revised together, sitting at this very kitchen table. And now I would sit alone at his graduation, relegated to whatever back corner they assigned to secondary family, while Vanessa orchestrated a celebration with people who had barely featured in Jake's life until she decided to play mother. The worst part, she was succeeding. I called Jake that evening, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey Mom." His voice had that slightly distracted tone I'd come to recognize, the one that meant he was probably doing something else while talking to me. Likely homework or texting friends. "Hi sweetheart, I got the graduation invitation today." I paused, hoping he would offer some explanation. Oh, cool, you're coming, right? He sounded genuinely pleased, which made what I had to ask next harder. Of course I'm coming, but Jake, the letter says I only get one ticket and I'm listed as secondary family. The words felt bitter in my mouth. The silence that followed told me everything. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, uncomfortable. Yeah, the school has strict ticket policies because of the venue size. Dad and Vanessa got their allocation, and I guess that's how the school classified things based on my primary residence. My heart sank. Jake's primary residence had technically become Richard's house last year, a decision made after Vanessa had dangled the promise of a car for Jake's birthday if he moved in with them. On paper, it made sense. They had more space, lived closer to school, and could offer Jake his own bathroom, something impossible in our apartment. I'd agreed because I wanted what was best for him, even as it broke my heart. But Jake, I wanted to bring Aunt Sarah. She's been looking forward to seeing you graduate. My sister had been Jake's godmother and a constant presence in his life. Mom, I'm sorry I tried, but they're really strict about it. His voice had that defensive edge now, the one that appeared whenever he was caught between his two families. Vanessa already had to pull some strings to get tickets for her parents and everyone else. Her parents, the ones who'd met Jake all of 5 years ago, versus my parents who'd died before seeing their grandson graduate. I understand, I said, though I didn't. I'll see you this weekend. Actually, I've got that college prep weekend Vanessa signed me up for, remember? But I'll call you. We said our goodbyes and I sat staring at my phone long after the call ended. Later that night, unable to sleep, I found myself scrolling through social media again. Vanessa had posted more graduation content, a memory lane collection of photos of Jake starting from high school. Not a single photo from before she met him, as if his childhood simply hadn't existed. In the comments, I noticed something odd. A reply from someone named Margaret Davis. So glad we could accommodate the extra tickets for the family. Looking forward to seeing you all at graduation. Margaret Davis, as in Principal Eleanor Davis's mother. I clicked on her profile. Indeed, she was the principal's mother and apparently a longtime friend of Vanessa's family. The pieces clicked into place. Vanessa hadn't just received her ticket allocation, she'd manipulated the entire system through her connections. The strict ticket policy was flexible enough for her extended family, but somehow couldn't accommodate Jake's own mother bringing a single additional guest. With shaking hands, I opened my laptop and dug deeper. A quick search revealed Vanessa had donated substantially to Westlake's new athletic center last year. Her family name was prominently displayed on the donor wall. The same family that had contributed to Principal Davis's previous political campaign when she ran for the school board years ago. I found myself going back through years of social media posts, text messages, and emails. A pattern emerged that I'd been too busy working and parenting to fully notice. Jake's 14th birthday, Vanessa had accidentally scheduled the family celebration on the same weekend I'd planned his party, forcing Jake to choose. His 16th birthday, the surprise car presented with the caveat that it stayed at home with them. College tours mysteriously scheduled during my rare weekends with Jake. Every school event, Vanessa and Richard front and center, while I received information days later, often too late to rearrange my work schedule. It wasn't a series of unfortunate coincidences. It was a campaign, methodical and patient, to slowly erase me from my son's life and replace me with the picture-perfect mother who could give him everything I couldn't. And it was working. I woke up the next morning with swollen eyes and a throat raw from crying. My initial despair had transformed into something else overnight, a burning anger that made my hands shake as I poured my morning coffee. The mug slipped from my grip, shattering on the kitchen floor. Coffee splashed across the linoleum and onto my bare feet, but I barely felt the heat. 5 years of slights, of watching another woman try to claim my child as her own, of being pushed further and further to the periphery of my son's life, it all culminated in that broken ceramic on the floor. I screamed, a primal wounded sound that had been building inside me for years. Then I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years and dialed Diana. Diana had been my best friend since college, long before Richard, before Jake, before my life had fractured into before and after. She arrived 40 minutes later, with bagels, tissues, and a bottle of wine that we didn't open. I'm going to fight this, I told her, pacing my small living room. I'm done being polite while that woman steals my son. I'll go to the school board. Hell, I'll call every parent in Jake's class. I'll show up at their fancy reception with a bullhorn if I have to. Diana listened, letting me vent until the tide of anger began to recede. Then she guided me to the couch and took my hands in hers. Mel, she said gently, I get it. I do, and you have every right to be furious. But think about what you really want here. I want my son back, I said immediately, my voice cracking. You've never lost him, Diana said firmly. This isn't about Vanessa, not really. It's about Jake, and what's best for him on his graduation day. The righteous anger that had been propelling me forward suddenly deflated, leaving behind clarity. Diana was right. Making a scene would only force Jake to choose sides on what should be a celebration of his achievements. So I just accept being sidelined, again? I asked, feeling defeated. Diana's expression hardened. I didn't say that. I said no bullhorns. There's a difference between causing a scene and standing your ground. We spent the next few hours strategizing. Diana, ever practical, helped me focus not on what Vanessa had done, but on what I could do within the constraints I faced. You need to remind Jake and everyone else who you are in his life without turning this into a competition, Diana concluded. Take the high road, but make damn sure that road leads right through the middle of his graduation day. That afternoon I started researching. Westlake's graduation ceremony wasn't just a single event, it was a whole day of activities. The formal ceremony had restricted seating, but the rehearsal that morning was open to all. The senior breakfast before that had no explicit guest policy, and the grounds would be open for photos after the ceremony before the various private celebrations began. The next day I called my old colleague Michael, who now worked in Westlake's administrative office. We'd bonded years ago over being single parents, and he'd always had a soft spot for Jake. Melissa, good to hear from you, he said warmly. Excited for the big day? I explained my situation, not the personal drama, just the ticket limitation. Michael's voice softened with understanding. Let me see what I can do, he promised. No guarantees, but there might be some options for the ceremony we haven't explored yet. With that piece in motion, I turned to what I could control. If Vanessa was orchestrating the celebration after graduation, I would focus on everything that came before it. I spent a week gathering photos, not just recent ones, but images spanning Jake's entire life, his first steps, learning to ride a bike, the science fair project we'd stayed up all night completing, his middle school graduation, when it was just the two of us celebrating with ice cream because Richard had been too busy to attend. I contacted Jake's favorite teacher from elementary school. Mrs. Chen had been pivotal in identifying his gift for mathematics. She still remembered him and happily wrote a beautiful card about his early potential. I found his first attempt at a college essay full of crossed-out words and margin notes in my handwriting. The revised version had won him a scholarship. Diana helped me compile everything into a handcrafted memory book, not sleek and professional like something Vanessa would commission, but authentic and filled with the messy, beautiful reality of Jake's journey to adulthood. For his graduation gift, I chose something that money couldn't buy. I'd saved the watch my father had given me when I graduated college. It wasn't expensive, but it carried history and meaning. I had it restored and engraved with a simple message: time moves forward, but love remains. Always proud, always your mom. As my plan took shape, I felt something unexpected replace my anger, determination, yes, but also a quiet confidence. Vanessa could orchestrate grand gestures and manipulate circumstances, but she couldn't erase the 18 years of history between Jake and me. No amount of money or social connections could replicate that bond. I decided I wouldn't fight to be at the center of Jake's graduation day. I would simply refuse to be erased from it. The morning after finalizing my plan, I sat down to write Jake a letter. Not an email or text that could be quickly read and forgotten, but an actual letter on stationery, the kind that required attention. Dear Jake, as your graduation approaches, I find myself thinking about the journey we've shared. Do you remember when you were 7 and insisted you could make breakfast by yourself? I found you surrounded by eggshells and flour, proudly presenting a plate of what you called scrambled pancakes. I ate every bite. I remember your first day at Westlake. You were so nervous, you insisted on wearing your lucky socks, the ones with holes in both heels. I worried about you all day until you came home bubbling with excitement about the science lab. Every late-night study session, every basketball game, even when you barely left the bench that first season, every moment of doubt and triumph, I've been there, Jake. Not because I had to be, but because there's nowhere else I would rather have been. I understand things are complicated now. Growing up means navigating complex relationships and loyalties. I've tried to give you space to do that, even when it hurt. But I need you to know that no matter what anyone says or implies, no one can erase me from your story, just as no one can diminish my pride in the amazing young man you've become. I may only have one seat at your graduation ceremony, but my heart will be taking up the whole auditorium. Always your mom. Mom, I mailed it the old-fashioned way, knowing it would arrive at Richard's house in a day or two. Then I called Michael at Westlake's administrative office for an update. I've been making inquiries, he said. Eleanor, Principal Davis, is being unusually rigid about the ticket allocations, but I've got some news about the senior breakfast. The event coordinator is a friend of mine, and she's confirmed you can definitely attend. It's traditionally for the graduates and teachers, but parents are welcome. It's just not typically advertised that way. Thank you, Michael. That means a lot. There's more, he continued, lowering his voice. A few of Jake's teachers were asking about you. Miss Winters specifically mentioned how you never missed a parent-teacher conference, even when you had to come straight from work. She remembered how you helped organize that math competition fundraiser 2 years ago. Warmth spread through my chest. I didn't think anyone noticed. People noticed dedication, Melissa. When I mentioned your ticket situation, Miss Winters and Mr. Abernathy both seemed concerned. They're on the graduation committee. I can't promise anything, but they're looking into it. That afternoon, I received a text from Jake. Got your letter. Thanks, Mom. Can we talk tomorrow? But tomorrow never came. When I tried calling Jake the next evening, the call went straight to voicemail. My follow-up text received no response. The pattern continued for 3 days, which was unusual for Jake, even with his busy schedule. On the 4th day, Richard called. Melissa, he began, his voice carrying that forced reasonableness I'd come to hate during our divorce. We need to discuss your communications with Jake. What are you talking about? Vanessa found your letter. She's concerned that you're trying to make Jake feel guilty right before graduation. My grip tightened on the phone. It was a private letter to my son Richard. Well, it upset him, and frankly Vanessa thinks you're being manipulative. The graduation arrangements have been set for months. You agreed to the living arrangement that makes our house his primary residence. I didn't agree to being erased from his life. I snapped, and since when does Vanessa read Jake's mail? Richard sighed. She was organizing his graduation gifts and cards. Look, we're all trying to make this a special day for Jake. Maybe it would be better if you just focused on the ceremony itself and left the celebrations to us. Jake needs stability right now, not emotional complications. You mean he needs to pretend I don't exist, except when it's convenient, I said, my voice shaking. Put Jake on the phone, Richard. He's not here, he's at SAT prep. On a Friday night. Vanessa arranged it. Ivy League admissions are competitive, Melissa. You know that. After hanging up, I immediately texted Jake. Dad says you're upset about my letter. That wasn't my intention. Can we please talk? Hours later he finally responded. Not upset, just complicated. Vanessa's being weird about graduation stuff. Sorry, haven't called. Phone privileges got tangled in debate about household focus or something. Talk soon. Phone privileges, as if he were 10 years old instead of 18. The next day, I received an official email from Westlake Preparatory Academy, stating that after review, ticket allocations remain unchanged due to venue capacity constraints. However, the email came with an unexpected attachment, a separate invitation to the Senior Awards breakfast, where Jake would be receiving recognition for his achievements in mathematics. The invitation specifically included my name. 2 days later, Miss Winters called me personally. Melissa, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. We met at several parent events over the years. Of course I remember you, Miss Winters. You've been wonderful for Jake. That's actually why I'm calling. Several faculty members and I were discussing the upcoming valedictorian speech. Jake, as you know, is one of our top candidates. Pride swelled in my chest. He is, yes. And we traditionally invite the parents of potential valedictorians to a special rehearsal. I wanted to make sure you received the information directly. Her emphasis on directly spoke volumes. As graduation week approached, I noticed a shift in communications from the school. Suddenly, I was receiving every announcement, invitation to senior events, and update, all forwarded by different staff members, all marked important to ensure delivery. I later learned that Richard had called the school to complain about the mixed messages being sent regarding parent participation. Principal Davis had apparently assured him that ticket allocations remained unchanged, but could not explain why multiple faculty members had taken independent actions to include me in other events. The weekend before graduation, Jake finally called. "Mom?" His voice was hushed. "Sorry, it's been weird. Things are really tense here. Are you okay, sweetheart?" "Yeah, just, Vanessa saw your name on some graduation committee emails and freaked out. She and Dad had a huge fight. She keeps saying you're trying to hijack the graduation." "Jake, I know, Mom. I know you're not." He paused. "I found out about the ticket thing. How Vanessa's mom knows Principal Davis. How she specifically requested you get classified as secondary family. Dad doesn't know she did that." My heart raced. "How did you find out?" Miss Winters kind of let it slip when she was talking to me about the valedictorian speech. She said something about making sure both your parents had equal access despite administrative classifications. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. "Jake, I don't want to put you in the middle of this." "I'm already in the middle, Mom." His voice cracked slightly. "I've gotta go. Vanessa's calling everyone for dinner. But Mom, I want you there. At everything." After we hung up, I received a text from an unknown number. "This is Diana's cousin Rachel, school board member. Heard about your situation. Principal Davis has been reminded that parental exclusion policies require legal documentation. See you at graduation." All events. Graduation day dawned bright and clear. One of those perfect May mornings that seemed crafted specifically for new beginnings. I woke before my alarm. My stomach knotted with anticipation. The senior awards breakfast was scheduled for 8 a.m. I arrived at 7:30, wearing the new navy dress I'd splurged on for the occasion. Diana had helped me select it. "Classic but striking," she'd said. "You want to look like someone who cannot be overlooked." The breakfast was held in Westlake's Grand Hall, transformed with white tablecloths and floral centerpieces. I checked in at the welcome table where Miss Winters greeted me with a warm smile, and personally escorted me to a table near the front. "We've arranged seating by student achievements," she explained loudly enough for nearby parents to hear. "Since Jake is receiving the Advanced Mathematics Award, his family is seated here." I caught sight of Richard and Vanessa entering just as I sat down. Vanessa froze momentarily upon seeing me, her perfectly made-up face tightening before she composed herself. She wore an elegant cream-colored designer suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "There must be some mistake," I heard her telling the coordinator. "We should be at the mathematics table. Our son is receiving that award." "No mistake, Mrs. Wilson," the coordinator replied pleasantly. "Jake's mother is already seated there. We have you at table 3, with the other parents of science achievement recipients." Richard placed a restraining hand on Vanessa's arm as she began to protest. They made their way to their assigned table, Vanessa's spine rigid with indignation. Jake appeared minutes later in his graduation robe, looking both grown up and impossibly young. His eyes lit up when he saw me. "Mom, you made it." He embraced me tightly before whispering, "They tried to tell me you might not come to this part." "Wild horses couldn't keep me away," I whispered back. Throughout the breakfast, Vanessa made repeated attempts to insert herself into Jake's moment, calling him over to meet various parents, loudly discussing the family celebration planned for later, positioning herself in every photo opportunity. But the teachers, especially Miss Winters and Mr. Abernathy, seemed to have formed a protective barrier, consistently directing Jake back to the mathematics honorees section, where I sat. After the breakfast came the graduation ceremony. My single ticket placed me in the back rows of the auditorium, while Richard, Vanessa, and their entourage occupied a prominent section near the front. I held my head high as I walked to my seat, acknowledging the nods from teachers who recognized me. Principal Davis took the stage to welcome everyone. Her speech was standard commencement fare until she reached a section about parental support. "Behind every graduate today stands family. Those who have sacrificed, encouraged, and believed in these young people from their first steps to this momentous stride into adulthood." From my position, I could see Jake in the front row of graduates, his posture suddenly attentive. Sometimes that support comes from traditional family units, Principal Davis continued, her eyes briefly scanning the audience. And sometimes it comes from single parents who work multiple jobs to provide opportunities, from those who help with homework after exhausting workdays, from those whose love manifests in daily sacrifices that often go unrecognized. I couldn't be certain, but I thought I saw Jake turn slightly to look at Vanessa and Richard before his gaze seemed to search the back rows where I sat. The ceremony progressed with the predictable rhythm of such events until it was time for the valedictorian address. My heart swelled with pride as Jake approached the podium, looking so tall and assured in his cap and gown. Fellow graduates, esteemed faculty, and beloved family members, he began. We gather today at a threshold, looking back at where we've been and forward to where we're going. His speech was eloquent and thoughtful, touching on the expected themes of future, opportunity, and gratitude. But as he neared the conclusion, his voice took on a different quality, more personal, slightly less rehearsed. Before I close, I want to acknowledge the people who made it possible for me to stand here today. He paused, his eyes scanning the audience. To my father who taught me to aim high. To my teachers who challenged and guided me. Then his gaze shifted toward the back of the auditorium, finding me unerringly despite the distance and crowd. And especially to my mother who has been my foundation through every step of this journey. Mom, you worked 3 jobs to keep me at Westlake when times were tough. You stayed up late helping me with calculus, even after working double shifts. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Tears blurred my vision as murmurs rippled through the audience. From the corner of my eye, I could see Vanessa shifting uncomfortably in her seat. Someone wise once told me that we don't get to choose the circumstances of our lives, but we do get to choose what we make of them. Jake continued. My mom taught me that lesson not with words but with her example every single day. Everything I've achieved began with what you gave me. Mom, I wouldn't be here without you. The auditorium erupted in applause. Through my tears, I could make out Miss Winters and several other teachers rising to their feet. Soon the entire audience followed, giving Jake a standing ovation that seemed to stretch for minutes. After the ceremony, families spilled onto the lawn for photos. I hung back, watching as Richard and Vanessa gathered their group around Jake. Vanessa was directing everyone with precise instructions, her voice carrying across the grass. No, just family for this set. We'll do extended family after. I was about to slip away when Jake's voice cut through the chatter. Wait, where's my mom? He looked around, spotting me at the edge of the crowd. Mom, come here, we need you for the family photos. Vanessa's smile froze. Jake, darling, I was thinking we'd do parent photos after the group shots. Mom is family, Jake said firmly, loud enough for nearby graduates and their families to hear. I want her in all the family photos. He strode over and took my hand, leading me into the center of their carefully arranged tableau. Richard, to his credit, moved aside to make room, giving me a somewhat apologetic nod. Vanessa's face flushed crimson. This isn't appropriate, she hissed to Richard. We discussed the photo arrangement. Apparently Jake has other ideas, Richard muttered back. The photographer looked uncertainly between Vanessa and Jake. So shall we proceed with everyone? Yes, Jake said, his arm around my shoulders. With everyone who got me here. The camera flashed, capturing the moment. Jake flanked by both his parents, Vanessa's perfect arrangement disrupted, her smile tightly controlled. As we moved toward the reception area where refreshments were being served, Vanessa intercepted Jake. We need to leave soon for the reservation at Le Chateau, she said, her voice honeyed but firm. Everyone's waiting. Jake hesitated. I thought we'd stay for the school reception first. The reservation is for 30 people, Jake. They can't hold it indefinitely. Then they can start without me, Jake replied. I want to spend some time here with my friends. And Mom. Something in Vanessa snapped. Your mother has had her moment, Jake. I've arranged this celebration for months. Do you have any idea how much trouble I've gone to? How many strings I pulled to make this day special? That's the problem, Jake said quietly. You pulled too many strings, including trying to keep my mom from being part of today. Vanessa's eyes darted to me. What have you been telling him? She demanded. Nothing he didn't figure out himself. I replied evenly. This is ridiculous. Vanessa huffed, turning to Richard. Are you going to let her ruin everything we planned? Richard looked uncomfortable, caught between his wife and his son. Vanessa, maybe we should know, she cut him off. I've bent over backward to create a family for Jake. A real family, not some broken arrangement where he's shuttled back and forth. I've given him opportunities, connections, a future, and this is the thanks I get. Jake stared at her, something shifting in his expression. You didn't create a family for me. I already had one. The words hung in the air between them. Vanessa's perfect composure finally shattered. Your mother couldn't even afford to keep you in this school without Richard's money. She lives in that tiny apartment and works retail jobs. Is that what you want? Because I'm trying to give you something better. A small crowd had gathered, drawn by the rising voices. Miss Winters appeared at my side, her presence a silent show of support. Vanessa, Richard warned, looking mortified. But Jake stepped forward, his voice steady and measured in a way that made him suddenly seem fully adult. What my mother gave me, he said, can't be bought. The silence following Jake's words seemed to stretch for eternity. Vanessa's face cycled through shock, anger and finally, unexpectedly, a flicker of shame. Richard placed a hand on her shoulder, but she shrugged it off and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. Jake, Richard began. No, Dad, Jake interrupted. You let this happen. You stood by while Vanessa tried to push Mom out of my life. Did you know she manipulated the school to limit Mom's tickets? That she's been scheduling things deliberately when she knew Mom and I had plans? Richard's expression fell. I didn't know about the tickets, he said quietly. But I suspected other things. I should have said something. Yeah, you should have. Jake's voice softened slightly. Look, I appreciate everything you and Vanessa have done for me. The opportunities, the support. I'm not ungrateful. But Mom has been there for me every single day of my life. And I won't let anyone diminish that. Richard nodded slowly. You're right. I'll talk to Vanessa. He glanced in the direction his wife had gone. You should know, she comes from a complicated family background herself. This isn't about your mom, not really. It's about Vanessa's own issues with motherhood and belonging. That doesn't make it okay, Jake said. No, it doesn't, Richard agreed. Go enjoy your day, son, with your mom. I'll handle the reception. We can talk more later. As Richard walked away, Jake turned to me with a sheepish smile. Sorry about all that, Mom. I shook my head, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. Don't be. But I never wanted you to feel caught in the middle. I know. He fingered the graduation tassel hanging from his cap. I think I let myself get distracted by all the shiny stuff Vanessa offered. It was easier to go along with things than to make waves. You're 18, I said. You're allowed to be distracted by shiny things. We spent the next 2 hours at the school reception, surrounded by Jake's friends and teachers. Miss Winters brought over a slice of cake, winking as she told Jake, your speech was perfect. Exactly what some people needed to hear. Later, as we walked to the parking lot, Jake asked, would you mind if I still went to Dad and Vanessa's celebration dinner? I don't want to miss seeing Grandpa Wilson. He flew in from Arizona. Of course you should go, I said immediately. Jake, I never wanted you to choose sides. I just wanted acknowledgement that I'm your mother too, that I matter in your life. You more than matter, Mom. Jake's eyes were serious. You're the foundation. I meant what I said in my speech. 3 months later, I stood in the dormitory parking lot of Berkeley, helping Jake unload the last of his belongings. Richard and Vanessa had driven separately, bringing Jake's computer equipment and winter clothes. The summer had brought unexpected changes. After graduation day, Richard had finally confronted Vanessa about her behavior. According to Jake, it had led to some difficult conversations and eventually counseling, both as a couple, and for Vanessa individually. Our first co-parenting meeting in July had been awkward but productive. Vanessa had offered a stiff but seemingly genuine apology, acknowledging that her actions had been driven by her own insecurities, rather than Jake's best interests. I never had a stable family growing up, she'd admitted reluctantly. I wanted to create the perfect family unit for Jake, but I went about it all wrong. It wasn't instant friendship, far from it, but it was a beginning. Now, as we organized Jake's dorm room together, the old tensions had been replaced by a cautious civility. Vanessa focused on arranging Jake's desk area, while I made his bed with the sheets we'd picked out together. When everything was set up, we all stood in the small room, the momentousness of the occasion hitting us simultaneously. Well, Richard said, breaking the silence, I guess this is it. Jake hugged his father, then Vanessa, thanking them for their help. When he turned to me, I pulled the memory book from my bag and pressed it into his hands. For when you need a reminder of where you came from, I said softly. He clutched it to his chest. I'll never forget, Mom. As Richard and Vanessa headed for the door, Vanessa paused. We were thinking of having dinner before driving back, she said tentatively. Would you like to join us, Melissa? I caught Jake's hopeful expression and nodded. I'd like that. After they left to get the car, Jake turned to me. Are you okay with all this? I smiled, looking around the room that contained elements of all three parental figures in his life. Richard's practical contributions, Vanessa's stylish touches, and my familiar comforts. I am, I said and meant it. For a while I was so afraid of being erased from your life. But now I understand something. What's that? The people who truly love us can never be erased. Their imprint is too deep. I straightened his Berkeley sweatshirt. You're carrying pieces of all of us with you, Jake. And that's exactly how it should be. As we walked across campus toward the restaurant, I felt a profound sense of peace. The future would bring new challenges and adjustments, holidays to navigate, graduations yet to come, but the fundamental truth had been established. My role in my son's life was indelible. No amount of money or manipulation could change that. In the end, I hadn't needed vengeance or dramatic confrontations. I had simply needed to stand my ground and trust that the foundation I'd built with Jake was strong enough to withstand the storm. And it was.